The stage is set for the ultimate clash between mankind's mightiest champions and their demonic adversary. But this epic saga doesn't follow some glorified, overpowered champion. On the contrary, our story centers on an unsung warrior, a mere foot soldier, dutifully holding the line. As an expendable pawn, a stray blast of energy mercilessly tears right through his chest. A strike so devastating, he offers no resistance, simply letting the searing light consume him. And so, his insignificant story concludes. In his fading consciousness, he sees his fallen comrades, their bodies strewn across the blood-soaked battlefield. As for the famed greatest heroes, well, they're engaged in a cataclysmic duel with mankind's ultimate nemesis, the Liquidator. Against him, for valiant warriors stand, each blessed with extraordinary traits and brilliant powers. And then there are soldiers like our protagonist, used as nothing more than sacrificial lambs. These soldiers are little more than NPCs, waiting in the wings with no lines of dialogue. Their sole purpose, to die. He feels utterly pathetic. He reflects on his meager contribution to the war, wishing he was born with even a sliver of talent. But for all their immense power, those heroes don't possess a prayer of a chance. The Liquidator carves through them like they're nothing. In fact, a single devastating blow was enough to erase them. It's revealed the monster was just playing with its food the entire time. The final verdict on humanity's fate has just been delivered, or at least that's what Gray Lee had assumed. He then realizes his heart was completely torn to shreds, and yet he somehow still draws breath. The next moment, he's standing amid the devastation, before an all-powerful entity. This being offers absolutely no explanation for what has happened. The mysterious figure declares that Gray's body is fully restored. But the craziest part is that he healed it himself, using a dormant power that was buried deep within him. The entity then drops another bombshell, stating Gray is far more powerful than the Liquidator, the very same fiend who butchered the heroes like cattle. However, it's not certain if Gray can actually control this power. So for this moment, the being lends our hero a fragment of its strength, a sliver of power to defeat the Liquidator. Returning to the physical world, Gray's blade is instantly engulfed by an enigmatic aura bestowed by the cosmic entity. Not wasting a single second, he unleashes this new power to test if it's truly legitimate. It turns out this gift contains an unbelievable destructive force. So much power that the Liquidator actually acknowledges Gray's new might. But it proves to be insufficient. As Gray lunges forward for another assault, bam! He's bisected just like the others. Crimson spills from his severed body as the Liquidator, strangely enough, commends him once more. He was the only human to ever push the Liquidator this far, forcing him to unleash his full power. But the Liquidator is about to get another massive shock. Gray isn't finished. That shadowy power now fuels him. The lower half of his form, which had vanished only a moment ago, has now been reborn, constructed entirely of dark energy. My man is going full Demon Slayer mode with that colossal sword. It is a truly spectacular sight. To imagine that a mere mortal could make the Liquidator tremble, the fiend sees no other choice but to conjure a honeycomb barrier to protect its pathetic hide. Gray no longer even appears to be human. He descends upon him with his gigantic blade, and the collision unleashes literal shockwaves across the land. The barrier explodes into countless glittering shards, and Mr. Arrogant gets a face full of dirt from the incredible blow. Now the monster is genuinely questioned if the creature it's battling is even a man. Hell, it's not even sure if Gray is still living. Meanwhile, our hero is pondering the very same question. But in this moment, only the battle truly matters. And yes, this demon is unbelievably resilient. But our boy is resolved to do what is necessary and utterly dismantle this unholy creature. He will not falter until this threat is annihilated. He unleashes another savage swing, and this vile beast begins to bleed. This bizarre, shimmering golden blood. In return, the fiend manifests some higher-level magic, sprouting angelic wings. It seems he is manipulating time itself. The day instantly shifts into night, with the moon shining down like a divine spotlight. It is a magnificent display, and Gray acknowledges, but not magnificent enough to shatter his resolve. He charges in with everything he has, delivering a vicious, preemptive blow aimed at the liquidator's throat. But shockingly, his massive blade does not connect. Some strange defensive shield has appeared again. Then he begins to spout some gibberish that I can't comprehend. It seems that within this domain of true dust, nothing can possibly harm him, or so this monster proclaims. He commands Gray to gaze upon the heavens, to witness just how hopeless his situation has become. Well, our protagonist glances up, intrigued, and spots a radiant star-like object, shining with an unbelievable brilliance. Then boom, the object descends like a damned meteor and completely erases Gray from this plane of existence. The liquidator stands as the victor, gazing down upon the massive crater left in his way. But luckily, that enigmatic entity from before reappears, just in the nick of time, to reverse everything and send our hero into the past. He has but a single mission: to rescue the world. By the way, that mysterious entity's name is Kronos. Apparently, he and the liquidator share some kind of past, but nobody is revealing any of the details. So, cutting back to our protagonist, he awakens his eyes in a tranquil, lush green landscape just after his regression. It's serene, peaceful, and quite honestly, incredibly picturesque. It turns out he's in his old hometown, Renato Village. Not only his hometown, but a version of it from the past. He has traveled nearly 15 years into the past. It appears Kronos was true to his word. All of a sudden, a sharp pain courses through his hand. When he gazes down at his own hand, he sees injuries and bandages wrapped tightly around his wrist. Now that he's remembering it, this was a period in his life when he was little more than a punching bag for Belder and his crew. But with this brand new chance at life, it would be truly pitiful if he was still subjected to bullying. Then again, he couldn't possibly face those thugs directly. My man is nowhere near their level. Looking back, even defeating the liquidator feels like an impossible dream. He must devise a plan to handle these tormentors, or he is fated to endure this same agonizing fate all over again. It seems our hero can never get a break. Or can he? He just so happens to run into the same punks he had been dreading encountering the most. Of course, it's Belder and his henchmen, since they've been feeling bored as of late. They've been actively searching for our protagonist, excited to uphold their ritual of good old-fashioned torment. Like it's some kind of new pastime, they throw an extra blade at his feet, commanding him to take it up. Our boy just stares at the sword, bewildered. He still hasn't deduced what these goons are planning. After all, 15 years have passed, so his memories are somewhat clouded. Belder, on the other hand, thinks Gray is feigning ignorance deliberately, so he is generous enough to remind him of their usual training duels. Hearing this, Gray attempts to quickly dismiss these annoyances by gesturing towards his bandaged hand. He is appreciative of the offer, but regrettably, he is unable to participate as the wound has not yet mended. But it seems our hero can't escape these delinquents, unless he takes the sword and engages them. They even promise him the blades are completely dull, so there's almost no possibility of being injured. Gray, however, can't escape the notion that an injury is still plausible. Regardless of how blunt the weapon is, it is still a piece of solid iron. One incorrect strike to the wrong area could earn you a direct trip to the afterlife. Well, he's not wrong about that. One slight tap to the family jewels, and you'll be doubled over on the floor in excruciating pain. But these thugs don't appear to grasp the reasoning in Gray's statement. Belder gets into his stance, preparing to attack. He despises hearing the word no from Gray, so he rushes towards him like a charging rhinoceros. To begin the spar, Gray was given a chance to grab the blade, but the time is up and Belder is already charging it. Our protagonist finds it absurd that this guy calls this a training spar, while rushing forward like he's enraged at his own father. That's when Gray recalls what a former army physician told him. The cause for his swordsmanship never advancing was due to a wound he received when he was a child. Now that he's considering it, perhaps this is the very injury that altered his destiny forever and condemned him to live as a weakling. Belder comes smashing down with his blade, but Gray vanishes in a blur and evades the attack. But in all seriousness, even Gray himself is stunned that he was able to evade. Belder's expression, meanwhile, contorts with irritation upon witnessing such remarkable speed. He launches another attack, which our guy sidesteps again. Then a swift strike aimed low at his legs is also effortlessly evaded. The thug is trying desperately to land hit on our boy. He's like a crazed animal on a rampage, hell-bent on bringing his adversary to his knees. But Gray moves through the strikes like a shadow on the wind. Initially, Gray believed Belder was simply sluggish, but then it dawns on him that it's not Belder who became slower. It is he himself who has become much faster. My man is practically evading every blow like his life depends on it. Even Belder's cronies cannot deny what they are witnessing. It's as if Gray is a totally different individual. He may not possess the body he once did, but he still retains the memories of every skirmish he's endured. With all that knowledge ingrained in his mind, his body is essentially moving on instinct. He almost doesn't even have to think to avoid these attacks. Then Gray picks up the blade to continue this supposed training spar, which is feeling much less like training now. Belder is lost in his own arrogance, frantically trying to overpower Gray with his dull sword. But our protagonist has had enough. He swings his weapon for the first time. The intense shock from his mighty swing makes Belder's hand throb with immense pain. This only serves to prove how truly pathetic Belder is. If Gray is being truthful, he actually feels like the loser in this, sparring with such an insignificant opponent. But he also knows that Belder is not deserving of a shred of mercy. He is the worthless trash who tormented Gray, stole his potential, and inflicted all of that anguish. So with no respect whatsoever, Gray is about to give Belder a taste of his own medicine. With his next move, Gray effortlessly strikes the sword directly out of Belder's grip, disarming him in an instant, while Belder can only feel the utter shame. Gray understands this punk is even worse than he imagined. He seizes the moment to make a mocking remark, taunting Belder's ineptitude with a weapon. A single attack sent Belder's sword soaring. Then again, being without a weapon isn't a huge issue. After all, it was Belder who repeatedly claimed these dulled swords were completely safe to handle. In a skirmish, Gray's going absolutely berserk, swinging his blade so swiftly it actually slices through Belder's flesh, making blood erupt from the wound. As the reality of his predicament sinks in, Belder's legs lose all their strength and give out. Wait 1 second. Gray believed he was wielding a dull sword. So why did this punk suddenly start bleed? When he examines his blade, to be sure, he confirms that it is, in fact, a dull one. Although, if it had been a sharpened blade, this guy might very well be deceased right now. Now, let's not lose focus on the current predicament. Gray wields the blade with deadly accuracy, knocking loose several teeth and leaving Belder's nose gushing like a waterfall. My man is now standing menacingly over this punk, giving him nightmares for the rest of his life. It is always quite satisfying to watch pompous pieces of trash be reduced to blubbering, pathetic messes. It seems that this is enough to humble Belder. For the remainder of his days, oh well, it appears I celebrated too early. This punk still hasn't grasped his lesson. He yells for his cronies to get our boy and beat him senseless until he's a bloody pulp. The cronies pause before advancing for self-evident reasons. They literally just witness their leader get thrashed like a stray dog. So it's illogical to submit to the same destiny, even though they can choose to prevent it. One of the thugs proposes they strike in unison to overpower Gray. The trio immediately springs into formation, flanking our protagonist from all sides. Gray, however, is as unconcerned as he's ever been. If these punks truly desire their death wish fulfilled, my guy is more than willing to oblige. They all charge at him, planning to end him right then and there. At first, Gray felt a bit of empathy for these losers and was planning on letting them go. But it seems they will not stop until they've been taught their place. So he gives these street rats what they truly have come. Not much later, their faces are swollen up like a primate's backside, after a truly merciless facial massage. Once more, Gray finds it hilarious that these crying children in human bodies were once his greatest terror. He remembers. This crew is currently enrolled at Seria's swordsmanship dojo. Belder confirms they're indeed students of that dojo, though they hadn't attended classes recently, since these pathetic fools thought they were already skilled enough. Well, that's a pretty low bar for individuals who are meant to be powerful. Not that Gray anticipates much from the dojo anyway. He expresses a desire to enroll in the dojo, so he needs these thugs to serve as his introduction. Belder declines to grant the request. After all, he cannot fathom the repercussions once his instructor learns. He was so miserably defeated by him. Gray knows precisely how to manage these types of guys. He simply flourishes his sword around to scare these cowards, implying the terrible things that could occur if they disobey. Amusingly, this small intimidation tactic works perfectly. Belder is not just put in his place. but that thrashing has granted him the speed of a gazelle. He literally sprints down the path to get to the dojo as fast as possible, even abandoning his companions. Sometime later, they arrive in the town. As they're walking, Belda voices his confusion about why Gray would want to join a dojo. It turns out this dojo has an open recommendation spot for the academy. Our protagonist doesn't need to elaborate, as he is confident. Belder is perceptive enough to figure out what his true objective is. One of the thugs asks why Gray feels the need to enroll in an academy when he's already so strong. Little do these idiots realize, my guy doesn't aim that low. He possesses his own measure of enough. He clearly remembers the day all of humanity's champions were butchered like animals in the blink of an eye. And that was meant to be the planet's strongest force. Never mind the heroes. Even he couldn't touch that monster with all the mysterious power he possessed. Only the gods know how much strength will be enough to vanquish that beast. Although, he wasn't entirely without hope back then. The instant he obtained those insane dark powers, he felt like an all-powerful being that could annihilate anything. The thing that limited him was his deficient swordsmanship ability. He had been using a couple of moves he picked up from the Swordsman. If only he had dedicated more time to swordsmanship training, just as the Swordsman had done, he's certain he could have shifted the momentum of the battle all by himself. This is most likely why Kronos sent him here, to train his ass off until he is capable of wielding that dark, enigmatic power once more. A short while later, we are introduced to the master those thugs were mentioned. The group is receiving a harsh lecture for starting a brawl with an ordinary citizen. And what is even worse, all they received after provoking that person was a shameful defeat. This imposing woman is the swordsmanship dojo's head instructor, Saria. Belder attempts to explain they weren't actually trying to hurt anyone. It was only a simple training duel. The unfortunate punk ends up receiving a punishing blow for his deceit, a strike so forceful that he would be sent to the moon with this one-way ticket. His cronies are trembling with fear, praying they can just make it through the day. Nothing to worry about, fellas. The move she just executed was a small lesson she intended to impart to these morons. If they consider beating up a defenseless person a training spar, then her actions also qualify as a training spar. She aims her blade right at Belder's ugly mug and promptly banishes him from the dojo. Not just him, but his cronies are getting kicked out too. With that, those pathetic goons take their pathetic loser leader and leave. Pathetically, she instantly spins around, settles to her knees, and offers an apology to her newest student on behalf of her former pupils, who gave him so much grief. My guy dismisses the apology. Back to the matter at hand. She's heard he's seeking a recommendation for the academy, to which my guy confirms it. Since Belder and his worthless crew caused him so much grief, she's prepared to draft a letter of recommendation for him. Though before she does that, she needs him to demonstrate his abilities. Both combatants take their positions opposite each other, wooden blades in their grasp. Being the elder, she kindly allows him the chance to make the first move, and so the duel of strikes commences. They move with such incredible speed that literally all that remains behind are after images of their powerful attacks. All the while, Saria performs her duty, which is to evaluate our protagonist's skills. It is as if he has endured innumerable conflicts previously. Now it is clear why. Those fools got their asses handed to them by a single opponent. His technique is largely self-developed, but from time to time, his blade work seems akin to what is instructed at the academy. This probably indicates someone likely instructed him, though his form is still unrefined. One thing is certain, however, he possesses a great deal of raw skill, waiting to be unlocked and developed to its maximum potential. She has essentially discovered a diamond in the rough. Now that she has evaluated him, she resolves to conclude the duel. With the final strike, she is preparing to land. My guy prepares himself and skillfully blocks her assault. This deadly ballet once more recommences. My boy is literally deflecting every single one of her attacks, like he's repulsed by taking damage. This causes the woman to become uneasy. The utter lack of doubt on his part is unsettling her. It is as if no assault she attempts can break his composure. Hell, she even begins to feel frustrated with herself, to think she has to go all out in a training duel that was only intended to evaluate this young man's skills. She becomes so flustered that she starts to feel a sense of dread. For an instant, he resembles some kind of demonic being about to unleash a massive power. After withstanding the final blow from our protagonist effortlessly, she understands it was just an erratic swing. After that wild attack, Gray begins to feel exhausted and his stamina wanes. The woman notices him faltering. and interprets it as a vulnerability in his guard. So she pounces like a wild animal, only to find herself completely cornered in that very moment. This alternate universe version of Virgil's daughter is speechless, just when she believed she had discovered the winning move and was prepared to defeat our protagonist. The situation completely reversed on her. The shattered wooden blade clatters to the floor, while Gray finds himself momentarily stunned. There, he reconnected with the same dark power he had obtained in his fight against the Liquidator. The fact that he utilized a trace of that same power now indicates that he still has some command of his abilities, even after reverting to the past. But then, it strikes. An excruciating recoil overwhelms his body with so much agony that he collapses to his knees. He can barely even keep himself upright. While Saria is startled by his state and rushes to assist, even after using a small amount of his power. Gray understands that his current form is unable to handle his powers. Still, he summons the willpower to get back on his feet again, even though his body is trembling. After reassuring her that he is fine, Gray finds himself absorbed in his own reflections, realizing he can barely even stand, which highlights just how strategic he's going to need to be with his powers. Oh, he's also contemplating revealing the details about his power to the skilled swordmaster. Standing before him, Saria just stares at him blankly, dazed and bewildered. Meanwhile, our hero analyzes the predicament with a composed mind and determines that he should not tell anyone about what occurred. After all, who would possibly believe his unbelievable tale? And it's also not as if he can summon his dark powers at will to prove what he's saying. Keeping that in mind, he devises a plausible excuse that he merely pushed himself too hard. But to the swordmaster, she doesn't believe him for a single second, thinking how preposterous he sounds with that explanation. There is simply no way for him to have sliced her wooden sword when they were sparring with blunt weapons to begin with. She is shown to be very perceptive, to the degree she knows that Gray is concealing something from her. Virgil's daughter aims what is left of her blade towards our hero, prompting Gray to ask if there's a problem. Evidently, from the way he's managing his demeanor, she grasps that he does not wish to discuss anything at the moment. Rather than pressuring him about it, she honors his choice and inquires about his original desire for a recommendation to the prestigious academy. Our protagonist confirms this, stating that he heard she could assist him with that. Saria does not refute it either. She makes it clear that with her influence alone, she can secure him a recommendation to the Royal Academy of Swordsmanship, the premier training facility their nation has to offer. At the same time, surprisingly, she expresses no desire to endorse him for that particular institution, adding that Gray is not a suitable candidate for the academy. Her harsh statement pierced him more deeply than any sword. Gray begins to berate himself internally, questioning his skills and acknowledging that he's not strong enough. His final assault was the only noteworthy feat he accomplished in that skirmish. But wait, Saria hasn't finished speaking. She elaborates on her thoughts, contending that instead of attending the Royal Academy, the young man should instead apply to the World Union Academy. What a stunning turn of events that is. The news hits him with more force than truck going, hitting his eye-sky targets. Although the Royal Academy is the nation's best, the World Union Academy is the greatest in the whole world. The facility is regarded as the zenith of blade mastery. Gray is at a loss for words, because this very same Magic Academy is the one responsible for creating the most powerful combat unit, including renowned figures like the Sword Saint, Amy. He immediately questions Saria, asking if he's even skilled enough to enter a distinguished institution of that caliber. Amusingly enough, the woman shatters his hopes, stating that in his current condition, there's not a chance in hell he's even making it past the entrance. The Swordmaster understands that even Gray is aware of his own weaknesses, particularly when it pertains to the pathetic state of his body at present. When it pertains to the Royal Academy, the kid might just manage to perform a miracle due to his blade-wielding skills alone. But that is simply not the situation for the World Union Academy. So yeah, dude's screwed if he doesn't train his butt off. Even Saria is flabbergasted. The young man has astonishing talent in his blade work, and yet he possesses the body of a stick figure. Uncertainty begins to set in, genuinely causing Gray to fret about the monstrous adversaries he will be forced to compete against in the World Union Academy. It is not going to be an easy journey, and with his current physique, that's completely out of the question for now. Observing his disheartened expression, Saria notes how he's so quick to surrender, even when there are a full 9 months. before the Academy's admission test. Again, lacking confidence in his own skills, Gray believes that even that much time will not be enough for him, despite her attempts to motivate him. Even Saria concedes that it's a very short amount of time, but even still, she presents him with an opportunity. The Sword Master wishes for him to place his trust in her for the upcoming 9 months, because during that period, something makes me think she's going to recruit a drill sergeant and have this kid run several marathons and do thousands of pull-ups. Anyway, Gray concedes that although he doesn't want to endure it, he has no other alternative. Proclaiming himself prepared, he hopes that the Sword Master will guide him well. Saria appreciates his resolute determination. At first, you all probably assume it's a positive sign, that they're beginning on a good note. But the mood instantly shifts to one of absolute terror, as Virgil's daughter formally declares. The start of his torturous training, Gray's grueling trials commenced. He trained like a scion, and frankly, ate like one as well. She truly is forcing him through a muscle-building phase. He also was forced to consume some strange-looking food, but his instructor was relentless and made him go through all. Their blade duels proceeded as before, the purpose of which was to sharpen his skills. And then 8 months flew by just like that. Kudos to Gray for obtaining his chiseled physique after surviving that arduous training. Even Saria is over here admiring his new body. Now that they've reached this point, she has nothing else in her repertoire to teach him. He's prepared to venture into the real world now. But her casual demeanor puzzles Gray, because there is still a whole month remaining before the admission exam. Virgil's daughter informs our protagonist that he will be spending a significant amount of time journeying to reach the site of the admission exam. That is the reason he must depart soon. As a last gesture of goodwill, Saria gives him a pouch of coins, guaranteeing him a smooth journey, covering his costs for the upcoming month. Now, that is a true mentor. As for our protagonist, he still feels uneasy about the idea of departing so quickly. Her insistent attitude saddens him, because he feels his instructor is pushing him out as if he's a nuisance. Smiling at his reply, she thinks he is overthinking the matter. Suddenly, Gray mentions the rumor of an ogre's lair nearby, grabbing Saria's immediate attention. He also mentions that the town is completely vulnerable due to the absence of security personnel. The Sword Master validates the existence of the lair, as well as the fact it was found just recently. At the same time, she gives him a smile, confident that nothing unfortunate will occur. If the worst-case scenario transpires, they will simply have to request aid from the royal capital. Although Gray is concerned, she believes his sole focus should be on taking his test, without any distracting thoughts clouding his mind. He is absolutely certain that his instructor is deceiving him, calming him so that he has nothing to be anxious about. The royal capital is never going to dispatch aid to a small town, and when the town is attacked and annihilated by the ogres, it will surely lead to Saria's gruesome demise. In his previous lifetime, he discovered that she perished while fighting the battle by herself. He doesn't reveal any of this and simply goes along with the situation, expressing gratitude to his instructor for assisting him all this time. Gray intends to depart immediately, eliciting a smile from Saria. She and her 2 massive personalities are supporting him to succeed. A few days later, we see a shot of her, navigating a perilous route to make her way to the lair. Here, the skeletal remnants of humans are gruesomely displayed on the trees. As a grim warning, Saria is attempting to locate the lair, using the intel she obtained from the scout. Noticing the trail of blood up ahead, she realizes that trouble is waiting nearby. But before she can make a move, the Sword Master is startled by the recognizable voice of her student. Perched atop a tree limb, he asks where his dear instructor is venturing so late in the evening, receiving a surprise appearance from him. She demands to know what he is doing here, when he should be concentrating on the academy, sticking his landing perfectly on the ground. He mocks her for questioning him when he should be the one questioning her. Instead, she deceived him when she claimed she would disregard the issue of the lair and allow the royal capital to deal with it. Making up a justification, Saria says that the royal capital declined to assist due to their own internal issues, which is why she undertook the task herself. She is self-assured in her sword-wielding prowess, thinking that whatever is inside that lair, she can vanquish it, especially after getting the report from the scout. Saria discloses that her foe will be an elite ogre and his henchmen, a legion of roughly 50 foul creatures. Even ignoring their leader, she knew a battle against these monsters would be a brutal ordeal. Their sheer, overwhelming numbers were a grave threat, but that wouldn't deter her advance. Incidentally, even Gray acknowledges that a single elite ogre poses no real threat, at least not one strong enough to best a warrior of her caliber. However, the true terror of these ogres is that their greatest weapon lies in their cunning minds and their crushing numerical superiority. With so many of them within this den, Saria is facing certain annihilation if they successfully surround and overpower her. Beyond that, our hero knows one truth with absolute, chilling certainty, a fact gleaned from the memories of his past life. Permitting Saria to undertake this quest alone is the same as sending her to her grave. And in the aftermath, the village will be left without a defender and be razed to the ground. That is the grim future he has already witnessed once before. Haunted by this vision, the young student implores her to let him join the fight, but his master remains unyielding, declaring that she is perfectly capable on her own, rather than lose precious time debating her chances of survival with her. Gray shrewdly changes his tactic, stating he desires to obtain true combat experience. He even presses further with a guilt-laced question, asking if she is worried that he'll merely be a liability to her. Though his wit is sharp, his master highlights the absurdity of what he just proposed. Their power levels are almost perfectly matched at this moment, so much so that she has difficulty besting him in their training duels. Even with that reality on the table, Saria reminds her pupil that a live battle is an entirely different beast, especially when facing down a monstrous horde such as this one. This mission is fraught with incredible danger, which is precisely why she refuses to let Gray gamble with his life, at least not until he's gained more real-world battle experience. Her student is devastated to hear her conviction. It was clear that Saria would not yield in her decision, so he plays his final, desperate card, an ultimatum that he wishes to present to his master. At first, she is stunned until Gray boldly challenges her to a proper duel, vowing to knock her unconscious, and then proceed by himself to face down the ogre horde. The air crackles with intensity. The student has just thrown down the gauntlet against his own master. His blade aimed true, Gray now waits for her answer. Seeing that her pupil is every bit as stubborn as she is, Saria finally concedes. She cannot stand the thought of him going alone, so she agrees to his initial request for them to go as a team. All that truly matters now is that he survives this ordeal. And yes, that legendary treasure is real. The two of them, now united, venture into the perilous forest to face the demonic horde. As the night stretches on, finally, the master and her student pinpoint the location of the enemy's den. The highly intelligent creatures use the terrain to their full advantage, crafting a lair that offered no chance of retreat should anyone be foolish enough to dare assault their fortress. Saria believes that the monsters must be supremely confident in their power, while Gray retorts that it's actually a far greater weakness for the two of them, as they will be forced to fight very carefully, surveying the scene from a secure distance. She's quite surprised that the leader is nowhere to be seen among the horde. This leads her to suspect it is hiding inside its tent. If that happens to be the situation, it's a great opportunity, because this allows them the chance to slaughter many of the underlings before the elite ogre itself can join the fray. To finalize their plan of attack, Saria orders her student to assault the monsters from a single flank, while she will be responsible for the opposite side, executing the plan without hesitation. Both of them explode into the battlefield, with their drawn blades gleaming. The bloody conflict begins before the monsters are even able to register the situation. The majestic Saria is already descending upon them, delivering a swift and clean decapitation, turning the creature's head into a mess as it collapses to the earth. With the first monster eliminated, the rest of the horde snarls and bellows at each other in their foul language. The entire legion is incensed and immediately enters a berserker rage, brandishing their weapons to slay the intruders. But it makes no difference, as our boy is entering his own beast mode, the way he is butchering the entire horde. This kid is a walking army. He carves through multiple monsters in a single blow. The magnificent Saria is doing the exact same, displaying the incredible skills she honed under her father Virgil. The two of them are an unstoppable whirlwind. Gray and Saria flawlessly protect each other's blind spots. Within the brief span of a few moments, Every single monster they can see is added to their ever-growing body count. By the way, she is actually thoroughly amazed by Gray's unshakable resolve. In a true life-or-death battle, he's never seemed more prepared. He warns his master to remain on her toes as well. But here's the kicker, though. Something about this very situation is giving him an awful premonition. This entire battle has been far too simple for them. Way too simple, in fact. Because if this was the true power level that Saria was meant to face, then she could have easily defeated all of them on her own, even without his assistance. And that brings him to a state of deep unease. Because whatever is slumbering inside of that tent, it is going to be far more horrifying than anything they battled so far. And speaking of which, a pair of menacing, glowing eyes pierce through the dark tent, staring at him from the darkness. The very moment Gray makes eye contact with the creature's gaze, he recoils in pure shock. Despite his own strength, he trembles and commands his master that they must flee this place at once. Even Saria fails to understand what has possessed him. All of a sudden, without any further explanation, he screams at her to run, with so much absolute terror in his voice that Saria doesn't question it. She immediately follows his order and bolts right after him. As they're sprinting for their lives, you might think that they're going to get away, but you'd be wrong, because their terrifying enemy literally descends from the heavens with an unbelievably massive jump. Gray is horrified as the monster smashes its feet into the ground, blocking the path of the defiant humans. Saria's expression shifts into one of pure shock, realizing that the boss monster has emerged personally to engage them in combat. But then Gray drops a truth bomb that nobody could have possibly predicted. This is not the boss monster at all. Just as he is about to reveal the identity of the true leader, a calamitous voice bellows at them from behind. This commanding roar summons yet another horde of creatures to hunt them down. The terrifying noise is overwhelming for Saria, but for the ogres, it has turned them into blood-crazed berserkers. Saria quakes in fear, unable to believe her own senses. There exists a monster more horrifying, more imposing than an elite ogre, and it's commanding the entire legion. Finally, Gray confirms their worst nightmare. They're now facing an ogre general. He is the true lord of this monster den. I have to remind all of you, they're literally caught in a pincer attack right now. On one path, the elite ogre stands blocking their only escape route. Retreating is also not a possibility, because a massive horde awaits them, along with the true master of the den. Saria voices her disbelief, fully aware that they cannot confront a monster of this level. Even at their peak, their only path to victory is to slay the elite ogre standing before them, to escape. So she does just that, charging at the monster and clashing her weapon against its own. Resolute on winning this battle, she capitalizes on a vulnerability and lands a deep, slashing cut against the creature's torso. Blood gushes from the deep wound, and while usually this would be a positive development, her fears only intensify when she sees that the wound is regenerated once again. Meanwhile, our hero is clashing with dozens of monsters completely on his own, sharing his insight into the Ogre General's terrifying powers. Apparently, its battle cry dramatically enhances the strength and healing speed of its minions. Essentially, they're now facing an elite ogre on super soldier serum. Vanquishing even a single one is incredibly difficult now, so much so that even Gray is finding it hard to land a clean blow on a monster. He yells for Saria to watch his back. He tells her to simply prolong the fight for just a little bit longer, which makes her wonder what kind of brilliant strategy he could possibly have in mind. To that, our hero reveals that in a hopeless situation like this, they possess only a single, clear objective, and that is to kill the most hideous one of them all, the coward who is hiding behind his own army. The desperate battle for survival ignites as Gray clashes his sword against one of the monsters. He expresses his frustration at being surrounded and cornered. He parries a devastating slash and finds another enraged beast charging him. He's carving a path through his enemies, focused on creating an opening directly in front of him so that he can finally reach his target. In his haste, however, he puts so much power into a swing that it literally shatters his own blade. This is a truly dire situation, because now he finds himself without the one tool he relies on. He evades the buffed ogre's powerful downward swing and shifts his focus to drawing his secondary weapon. Yeah, that's the most brilliant main character I've seen in some time. Carrying a second blade means always being prepared. After all, Gray is worried that this new blade will not hold out for long. Coming to his aid, his master hurls her own backup sword towards him, granting him yet another shot at achieving victory. With 2 spare blades in his hands, he now possesses a much greater chance to win. But even still, even this will not be sufficient to slay every single one of these beasts. There is simply too much opposition in his path to the Ogre General, while simultaneously fending off all of its minions. Trusting in his own skills, this man goes absolutely insane, unleashing a lightning-fast slash against his adversaries. His forward charge is interrupted when one of the ogres tries to ambush him. Luckily, he evades and then swiftly parries the blow. The battle is draining him, but he's still made considerable headway, dealing with the monsters that stand in his path. The Ogre General now feels threat and decides to unleash a second calamitous roar. To Gray's horror, the already strengthened monsters have just been granted another massive boost in power. This guy is really not having a good day, as he's struggling even more now to deal with them. Gray now understands that the Ogre General is cunning enough to see right through his plan. Now that it understands what the human is attempting to do, the Ogre General continues to bellow to incite his minions to attack. Blocking yet another strike, Gray shoves past the monsters to charge straight ahead. A legion of monsters is waiting to greet him. Instead of battling every single one of them, he strategically cuts down the ones that are directly blocking his path, but even that leaves him with deep gashes and injuries covering his body. The constant bloodshed is wearing him thin as he struggles to break through their unending barrage of attacks. Dropping his guard for a moment, he gets tackled by one of the ogres and is pinned to the ground. The situation appears to be growing extremely dire for him, because the ogres have him exactly where they want him. Fortunately, because they are so enraged, they've lost all ability to work together, because one of them slashes through one of its own comrades. Without even thinking, Gray theorizes that their strategy is likely to shatter his weapons. While he's lost deep in thought, a Giga Chad ogre winds up a mighty fist to shatter his skull. It is a life or death moment, and he knows he cannot afford to be hit. So he uses his blade to try and absorb the damage. But even then, my boy is launched into the ground with a sickening crash, just from a sheer force of the impact, finding himself at death's door. This man still struggles to rise in his broken state. That is the definition of a true badass, with the prior attack completely destroying his spare sword. Now, he possesses only one blade and dozens of ogres left to slay, as well as their leader. Once again, the predicament is not in his favor. In fact, it is nearly impossible to escape from this. Despite being granted a second chance at life, he fully grasps his current circumstances. Gray simply cannot win, not against so many crazed monsters wearing down his stamina. So he chooses to alter his combat strategy, screaming at his master to escape while she is still able. He can still act as a diversion for her retreat. Saria hears this and gives a faint smile, refusing to abandon him in such a way. She is still engaged with the powered-up elite ogre, but Gray doesn't understand why she is still so determined to fight. He begs her to escape, as he'll catch up to her soon enough, but Saria denies his desperate plea, horrifyingly admitting that she has lost the ability to run. She endured a deep, massive wound on her thigh, turning Gray's last hopes completely to dust. Even that strategy is no longer a possibility. There is no path left for them but to march towards their own deaths. Swinging his sword with pure fury, he contemplates the reason he was given a second chance. Despite shouldering such a heavy burden, all of it is about to come to a tragic end. Tragically, our hero's final sword chips and then shatters into pieces. And yet, he finds himself in a state of denial, despite losing his final weapon. Gray refuses to accept this as the conclusion to his story. If only he could access the power from his future, the horrifying power that rivaled the Liquidator and was even able to wound him. If he can use it, even for a single moment, then these monsters will all be torn to pieces. Forcefully recalling the sensation he felt at that time, he raises his broken sword, entering a deep, meditative state. And when he opens his eyes once more, Gray is no longer the same weakling he was moments before. A single, dark, burning slash completely annihilates the ogres, reducing them to ash with his burning black blade. Even Saria cannot comprehend what has happened, but it seems that our hero is still in complete control, as even after awakening his dark abilities, he offers her a reassuring smile. In the next few moments, Gray carves through every single beast in his sight, including the ogre general itself. Even his master cannot fathom what in the hell just transpired. She's too occupied with focusing on the elite ogre in front of her. But now that the ogre general has been slain, the empowering abilities seem to have completely vanished. Saria realizes that now she can effortlessly slay the beast, as it no longer possesses the ability to regenerate. Using a budget version of Judgment Cut In, she cuts the monster down, proclaiming that the elite ogre is nothing without its leader. They have finally won. Both of them manage to overcome all the odds and emerge victorious, despite having miraculously slaughtered an entire legion of ogres. Gray still offers an apology for shattering her sword. Saria tells him that it is a small price to pay for saving her life. In return, she takes the broken sword and wishes to question him about the technique he used at the very end. But before she is able to finish her question, our boy collapses to the ground, rendered completely unconscious due to the technique's after effects, leaving his master to cry out his name with great concern. The scene transitions to the inside of Gray's consciousness. He questions his location and sees nothing but a chain, levitating door right in front of him. He is bewildered until the door begins to emit the same kind of dark power that he channels through his ability. A sudden, dawning realization washes over him. This is his own true power. He wonders what might occur if he could break the door wide open. After all, he could then seize that power and make it fully his own. Determined to make an attempt, he steps forward. But the very moment he takes his first step, a horrifying, deathly aura washes over his entire body, frightening the very living essence out of him. And that was only after taking a single step. Gray is so paralyzed with terror that he hastily retreats. He doesn't have all the information regarding the origin of his power, but one thing was made abundantly clear to him just now. If he ever dares to try and force the use of his powers in his current state, there is no doubt in hell that he will perish. And that is not just a light statement, because the sensation is so horrifying that it brings him to tears. From the darkness, a voice whispers into his mind, praising him for his wise choice just now. Before Gray is able to process it any further, he awakens in a panicked state in his own bed. His master is right there beside him, relieved that he is finally conscious. Worried, he asks where he currently is. She clarifies that she took him to the village's medical center as quickly as she was able. This man was actually unconscious for 5 entire days, and I am so relieved that the author did not say 3 days, like in every other story. Anyway, she was terrified for his life, while Gray is trying to process the fact that he needed to recover for almost a full week due to the strain of the power he unleashed. Even Saria agrees that he went far above and beyond in that battle. It was the very definition of overcoming all odds. Still, she is worried about the state of his physical condition and asks if he is even able to move. Well, to check it out, our hero attempts to raise his arm, but he can't do a damn thing. He can hardly use it after using so much power, and with the state he is in right now, there is no way he can wield a sword with an injury of this severity. Well, actually, there's no way he'd ever be able to even rub one out either. So he has to fix this issue fast. Then there is the deep bruise on his arm left after the fight. Saria becomes worried for his condition, realizing that he's unable to move his own body. Well, Gray confirms that he's completely incapacitated for now. Even his master concedes that his arm will not return to normal anytime soon, revealing that every single bone within his arm has been completely shattered into pieces. This revelation astonishes our hero, because in a very strange way, he feels absolutely no pain. That is actually because of the magical potion treatment he was given. Our hero's jaw drops to the floor, because these items are supposed to be unbelievably expensive, and she just used one to treat him. Saria explains that it's nothing to be concerned about, as the village leader personally gifted it to them as a reward. The kid cannot believe what he is hearing. He doesn't even know the village leader on a personal level, and he's been given a magic potion at his own expense. Saria thinks he is being dense for not being able to grasp his circumstances, so she states it in no uncertain terms. Gray is now officially the savior and the champion of the village. Before he is able to process what she just revealed, the village leader bursts in to welcome the young man, thanking him profusely for everything that he did. To emphasize the magnitude of his achievement, the village leader reminds the kid that an ogre general is so powerful that it requires an entire town to even stand against one. That kind of menace threatened their entire village, and yet a single young man was able to slaughter his way through, carving his own path and slaying the monster, thereby securing the village's safety. For that, the village leader is eternally grateful. It is thanks to the heroic actions of the boy and his master that their lives are no longer in peril. Unable to take all of the praise, Gray claims that they are overstating his accomplishments, but the village leader thinks that it is he who is downplaying what he has done. Thinking about it for a quick second, Gray considers the result of his actions. He thinks that perhaps the village leader's statement is correct, remembering his past life. In that timeline, this village was burned to the ground because of the ogres razing it completely to ashes. That is the true weight of his great deed. The leader of the village is more than willing to give him a lengthy explanation of what makes him so incredible. But for right now, he is focused on the boy's quest to pass the admission exam for the World Union Academy. Speaking of which, Gray has just recalled his true objective. He recklessly went to slay the beasts in the monster's den just a few weeks before his test. With all of the time that was lost in between, he now only has 2 days remaining until the exam day. Oh, and by the way, just arriving there requires 3 full days of travel on foot. His best chance would be to ride a horse to cover the long distance in time. But he is completely broke and lacks the money to purchase one. He pleads with the village leader to loan him a horse for his journey. The good news is that the leader was already anticipating the boy would make such a request, which is why he's already readied the finest horse for his travels. Saria smiles, revealing that their initial plan was to transport him, even if he had not awoken today. Some people will truly help you, despite your own problems, just like Gray's allies here. And I hope we all meet more of them in our own lives, too. Gray steps out of the infirmary, only to discover the entire village chanting the boy's name and cheering for his success on the exam. They want him to do his very best, and they're not shy about thanking him for his great deed. The villagers even aid him with a large pouch of money. Everyone contributed a little bit so that he can pay for the entrance examination and sustain himself at the academy. The young man is deeply thankful to the villagers, who have shown him so much kindness with their support. He also humorously remarks that it is going to be incredibly shameful if he fails and has to return. But Saria is unbelievably confident in her own student, stressing that the other candidates applying for the admission exam are not capable of defeating an ogre general all by themselves. But that is not his only worry. The boy is concerned about his arm, as it is still badly injured, and there is no telling when it might recover. To that, his master argues that he should utilize his left arm. In the interim, even though his left arm is perfectly fine, it's just that he is more accustomed to his right. But his teacher believes, with his level of skill, it will not be an issue. Gray voices his own worries, stating that the difficulty of the entrance exam may be too much for him, to the degree that one arm will be a great handicap. But even then, Saria knows that the instructors or the proctors at the academy possess a very keen eye. When they witness his talent, they will surely choose him. The boy climbs atop his horse, while his teacher confidently proclaims that he is going to succeed. That is the only possible outcome. Thanking her for all that she has done, he swears that he will not fail. Remembering how the village was burned to the ground in his past life, he is glad that these people were granted a second chance with him. The world is already starting to change from this moment forward, and he's going to ensure that he shapes the future with his newfound power. In the following scene, our hero finally arrives at his destination. Gazing forward, he locks his eyes upon the sheer majesty of the World Union Academy. Inside the arena, the proctor declares the handing out of the examination tickets. All of the hopeful candidates will stay in the arena. From the look of things, there is a massive number of applicants, but only a minuscule number of 20 will secure a position in the class. They argue about the shifting number of slots each year, because in certain years, the academy has even taken 50 people, while in other, more rare instances, it has only taken 1. So the criteria for admission are not set in stone, it seems. Anyway, Professor Ariel takes center stage and steps to the front. She speaks to the examinees and clarifies that they must accept the document being distributed. With a simple snap of her fingers, a swirling, yellow portal opens, unleashing magical power and instantly materializing the tickets in each candidate's possession. Our hero receives his ticket. His identification number is 513 for the swordsmanship course. Professor Ariel states that their ticket contains only the most essential information, but it's nothing to be alarmed about, as the procedure is identical every single year. She also states that the academy is not concerned with one's age, or their gender, their country of origin, or social status. In other words, they quite literally do not give a single flying damn if you identify as an attack helicopter or not. They do not even care enough to learn their real names. The applicants who are fated to succeed will be requested to provide additional information, but for the total number of candidates here, it is of no consequence. Professor Ariel even confirms that it is acceptable if they provide a false name, once again showing the academy truly does not care. Anyway, a new problem seeks out our hero once more, because he arrived here today without his own sword, and yet he has been assigned to the swordsmanship course. This causes him to question the system's validity. Professor Ariel hilariously continues, proclaiming that she assigned each applicant a course based on their appearance. I realize she is meant to be perceptive or something, but it is just amusing how 1 second ago she was speaking about discrimination, and then she proceeds to say this. Ariel is willing to amend course information in the event that she was incorrect. Even the applicants believe that it is impossible to assign a course based on looks alone, especially when there are so many of them here. They have a strong suspicion that the academy must have researched them all ahead of time, so that is how they knew. The chance of mind reading. Magic also comes to mind. Professor Ariel does not reply to any of their theories. All she has noticed is that no one is objecting to their designated course. So next, she chooses to announce everyone's examination time. The information is magically printed on the ticket at once. Gray grows nervous because he is slated to have his exam on the very first day, giving him no opportunity to let his arm recover. Ariel announces that this examination will happen only one time, and it will determine one's entire future. If an applicant is tardy, instant disqualification will be the only result. She also reminds them that their times are absolute and will not be altered or changed upon any request. This is terrible news for Gray, who is struggling with his injuries. He is praying that his body will pull off a miracle and heal by tomorrow. The following day dawns, and guess what? The poor man's arm is not healed in the slightest. He has no other choice but to take the test in this condition. Gray's examinee number is called, and he begrudgingly steps forward. He attempts to compose himself in an effort to stay positive about his predicament. Assessing his left arm, he doesn't seem to have any problems, and he can also move his right arm if he puts enough effort into it. His current plan is to carefully watch the proctor's movements and find a path to victory from what he observes. He is observing a duel between an applicant and a proctor. The candidate foolishly rushes in to strike, but by the end of his charge, the proctor is completely unharmed and casually stands, awaiting his next move. The applicant drags his blade for yet another powerful slash, but even that attack is completely futile. It is easily blocked, and not only that, the proctor deflects his sword before sending him flying with a single, final blow, with his body slamming into the ground. The proctor announces the result of the examination, telling him to leave the examination area. You all might be thinking that maybe Gray has discovered something, but the funniest part is how this man literally gives up and resigns himself to the fact that he is about to get his ass handed to him. His number is summoned to step into the fighting ring. Gray considers his own chances, realizing that he clearly cannot defeat a proctor that just destroyed an applicant, even larger than himself. Inside the arena, our hero is given the courtesy of making the first move. Despite that, he is fully aware that this fight is going to be one-sided. Even so, he has to leave some kind of lasting impression. The duel begins with Gray charging in to strike. He remembers his master's lesson, who instructed him to use his entire body to land a powerful slash, rather than only relying on his arms. Channeling her wisdom into his movements, he realizes that the only way he can make up for the loss of his right arm is to rely on his other muscles instead. And so he unleashes his first swing, which the proctor sidesteps with ease. Even now, Gray finds himself struggling to fight in his normal style. After all, even though he is attempting to compensate for his right arm, it still does not alter the fact that he is at a huge disadvantage. Here, the proctor counters by attempting to strike him down, but to Gray's amazement, The sword is approaching far too slowly. It is as if he can predict its path without even needing to try. So our hero actually parries the attack successfully, still feeling the immense weight of the proctor's strength behind the strike. At the same time, he assesses that the proctor's form is not as masterful as Serious. So if he can simply concentrate on the techniques he was taught by her, there's a chance he might be able to find a vulnerability and create an opening. With that plan in his mind, Gray charges forward with all his might in an attempt to overpower the instructor. Oh, and the instructor is actually being forced backwards. His incredible speed is his undoing. Gray finds his confidence surging, realizing that he can effortlessly defeat this proctor. The lessons from his master flash through his mind once more. Their swords clash together again. But Gray overwhelms his foe with a full, powerful parry.